Hello everybody and welcome back to Sports Talk Live with Alex Patt. I'm your host Alex Patt on WCGR 80.5 FM. Our original final episode for the show is supposed to take place in a few days, but this is a small little special segment in wake of what happened last night on April 21st, 2016, and that is the no-hitter by Jake Arrieta against the Cincinnati Reds at the Great American Ballpark. It was a night of history, obviously. Every time a no-hitter or a perfect game is thrown, it's a big slice of history right there. And there's really nothing quite like the tension of when your team is throwing a no-hitter. Heck, when you're getting no-hit, there's also the tension. I mean, it's such a unique thing in sports, and you only find that kind of thing in baseball, so it's a really special type of occurrence to happen. So we're going to talk a little bit about the numbers, and of course we got to talk about Jake Arrieta. The reigning Cy Young Award winner from last year in the National League. This guy came over from Baltimore in 2013 in a trade that sent Scott Feldman and Steve Clevenger for the Orioles. Back when he was with the Orioles, he was a highly regarded guy. He always had a lot of talent, but he just did not have the command that a major league pitcher would normally have, and he struggled mightily. In Baltimore, his first 4 years in the big leagues, his career ERA was 5.46, and he was 20-25. And since coming over to the Chicago Cubs, Jake Arrieta is 40-13 with a 2.17 ERA. Quite a big difference. We also want to point out last year during his Cy Young season, he won 22 games with an ERA of 1.77, which is outrageous. And also to go along with that, this is not his first no-hitter, as many people know. He also no-hit the Dodgers last year in August, and that was his first career no-hitter. So it's interesting to see that both his no-hitters were on the road, not at Wrigley Field. So we're hoping that maybe if he throws another one, which I'm confident that he will, it'll finally be in front of the Wrigley Field faithful. Now, of course, there were a lot of Cubs fans there last night, and there were a decent amount of Cubs fans in LA last year, but to see it happen at Wrigley Field, that would be something special. Also, his last 16 starts, he's 15-0 with an ERA of 0.53 and 2 no-hitters. And as CBS Sports MLB tweeted, these stats are stupid. Because you know what? They're pretty stupid. Stupid good. That's superhuman. I don't even know if that's superhuman. That's above Superman. That's godlike right there. I mean, when Arrieta came over and he pitched really well in 2014, thought, you know, he's going to get a no-hitter one day, and he's going to be one of the NL's top arms. But I didn't think he'd be this outrageously unreal. It's amazing to see what he's done, and we just hope it keeps going, and hopefully he will help bring the Cubs to the promised land. So, let's look at the no-hitter itself yesterday. And, well, it was, to say the least, a pretty large margin of victory for the Cubs. They won 16-0 that game. And if we look at the box score here, the Cubs pounded out the 16 runs on 18 hits, and a lot of guys had multiple hits, and there were a good number of home runs in this game. We had a 3-run home run by Rizzo, a 2-run home run, and then a grand slam from Chris Bryant. We even had old man David Ross hit one out of the park, and Ben Zobrist hit his first home run as a Cub. So the long balls were flying out, and it was against the Reds pitcher Finnegan, who almost no-hit the Cubs on opening night, but then we broke up the no-hitter in the late innings, and the Cubs went on to win that game by a score of 5-3. As for the Reds, the amount of hits is pretty obvious, a big old goose egg. They did draw 4 walks and struck out 6 times, and a lot of people were saying how, despite the no-hitter, Arrieta didn't have his best stuff. If not having his best stuff is still throwing a no-hitter, then have mercy on whoever's batting against him when he has his very best stuff, because that's unreal. Let's compare the 2 no-hitters. We gave you the line for Arrieta last night. 6 strikeouts, 4 walks, no runs, no hits. And in the one in LA, he struck out 12 batters. And there was an error in that game. It was Starlin Castro couldn't snag a tough line drive to him. It was a tough play, but it was right at him, so it was an error. So you could argue that his stuff in the LA no-hitter was better, and the opponent in LA was obviously of better quality than the one in Cincinnati. I mean, Cincinnati still has a decent hitting lineup and everything, but LA was a really good team last year. Had a lot of good hitters. So, but a no-hitter is a no-hitter, and when you keep guys like Brandon Phillips and Joey Votto off the hit sheet, that's pretty impressive. So big congratulations to Jake Arrieta as he continues to roll and he continues to make a case to maybe repeat as a Cy Young winner. It's not going to be easy considering that the NL is just chocked full of good pitchers, including Zach Greinke and Clayton Kershaw, along with Arrieta. There's a lot of good pitchers out there he's going to compete with. DeGrom on the Mets, Matt Harvey on the Mets. But Max Scherzer is the one I'm thinking about now with the Nationals, who's thrown a couple of no-hitters. Looking ahead into the future, I think Arrieta has another no-hitter in him. Maybe this year, maybe next year. I don't know, but I don't think that's going to be his last no-hitter if he keeps going like this. And I think I'm kind of hoping that maybe someone like John Lester will throw a no-hitter for the Cubs. And no-hitters have been pretty rare for the Cubs, really, since from the 70s to 2008, because before Carlos Zambrano threw his no-hitter in 2008, the last one to do it was Milt Pappas in the 70s, the early 70s, which, by the way, on another tangent, Milt Pappas passed away a few years ago. He was a big Cubs fan after he retired from the game, so hats off to you. Rest in peace, Mr. Pappas. But that's a long time of the Cubs not throwing a no-hitter, and Zambrano throws the one in 08, and now you got Jake Arrieta throwing two, not even a year's apart, so that's pretty cool to see. And like I said before, throwing a no-hitter is such a historical feat that it's one of those few things that in a regular season, no matter how good or bad it goes, no-hitter or a perfect game is going to be remembered forever. We also remember in 2014, Jake Arrieta brought perfect games into the 7th or 8th innings several times. The one notable one was really the one in Boston when the Cubs swept the Red Sox, who were the defending world champions at the time. And one of the games, Arrieta brought the perfect game into the 8th inning, and then Stephen Drew singled off him. And then there were a few times at Wrigley Field against the Reds where he brought in some perfect games and no-hitters into the late innings that were eventually broken up. And you said right there, one day he's going to get his no-hitter. Well, now he has two. So thank you for listening to Sports Talk Live with Alex Patt. I'm your host, Alex Patt, and we will join you again in a few days to wrap up this semester-long show. It's been a really fun ride, so stick around and take care.